All right, hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Anderson from Clarinet Mentors.
And I'm Sean Perrin from the Clarinet Podcast in Calgary.
And we are very excited today to host our first time live broadcast for clarinetists from all over the world. We've got more than 50 people online right now, which is awesome and amazing. Welcome. If you're watching the replay, we welcome you also. It's a great chance for people to ask clarinet questions, and hopefully between Sean and I and the community here, we'll have some great answers for you.
Oh, we got our first question there now. Maybe we should introduce ourselves first, though, since I think we got kind of an audience overlap here. Is anyone here, I'm just going to go back to gallery view. Is anyone here from Clarinet right now? Just if you could just throw a comment in the comment bar or something. And then I'm interested, who's here from Clarinet Mentors? Maybe wave if you're from Clarinet Mentors. Well, that's lots of you guys. And who's here from Clarinet? Maybe thumbs up. Oh, not so many. Okay. I think a lot of people aren't on video. A lot of people are on video. Anyways, I'm just curious, but we're kind of overlapping the audiences a little bit here. So I'm Sean Perrin, and I'm from Calgary, and I did my Bachelor of Music at the University of Calgary here. I studied with Steve Amsel, and since doing my degree, I've been freelancing a lot in the city. I've been subbing with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra, a little bit with the Red Deer Symphony. I also play percussion, and with that, I've been all over the place and doing things with that. I was fortunate enough to have the chance to record a couple of CDs with CPO as a guest or a substitute clarinetist. And also last year, I just recorded my first album called Dream Songs, which was with a local guy on marimba. If you haven't checked out the Clarinet Podcast, make sure that you do that. It's a free, it's like a little flyer for it. It's a free, like a radio show. If you're not familiar with what a podcast is, it's like a radio show that you can download. And then you can stream that for free on the website at clarinet.com, or you can head to iTunes or any kind of what they call podcatching app to check that out. There's over 50 episodes now, and there's interviews with people like Michael Lowenstern, Martin Frost, Michael Norsworthy from Boston, all sorts of people on there. So it's been a really great resource for interesting conversation in the clarinet community. Yeah, I think that's about it for me. Michelle?
Yeah, Sean, I'm going to jump in and just say, for those of you who haven't listened to the Clarinet Podcast, it's really interesting. There's all sorts of different topics, and I'm just now hopefully putting on screen. Sean, let me know if you can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
That's the info to the links to some of the things Sean was just talking about. So if you look at...
So I forgot to mention that there's actually a giveaway element to it as well. Right now, upcoming, there's a D'Addario X25E mouthpiece. There is some signed books by different artists, CDs, a couple special barrels by a company called Wesley Rice Clarinet Works. And past giveaways have actually included things as amazing as a Bakun Alpha Clarinet from Bakun Musical Services and other things like that. So if you subscribe at the email address, you'll be entered in those kind of draws as well. So.
That sounds great, Sean. I forgot to mention right off the bat, as a reward for those of you that are here live, Sean and I both have some special door prizes that we're going to give away at the end of our session. We're aiming to go for about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. We'll see how it goes. If we're all really having a great time, you may be a bit longer, but please stick around because we have some exciting door prizes. So I'm Michelle Anderson of Clarinet Mentors. If you're not familiar with Clarinet Mentors, it's an online service to help adult clarinetists play clarinet more easily. And I guess what I say is more easily and more beautifully, because I think we all love the instrument. I have a YouTube channel that you can find at youtube.com/Clarinet Mentors. There's also, I'll post some links too in the chat box for you to see. But yeah, many of you are part of the Clarinet Mentors community, and I think we have just an awesome group of clarinetists who are here. And I'm also a professional player in Vancouver, BC. I play regularly with our opera orchestra and various groups around town, chamber music. I really like wind ensemble music. I play with a local wind ensemble. I recorded the Tekeli Clarinet Concerto with our wind ensemble at a World Association of Symphonic Bands and Ensembles concert in San Jose in 2015. So that's some of what I do professionally. But what I really love to do is teach. So we're here today to just take all of your clarinet questions. Some people emailed them in, but we have a whole bunch. And I think what Sean and I are going to do is just kind of take turns on questions here, and we'll see what kind of discussion develops as we go through here.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I see the first question here is something about interested in how to do jaw vibrato. and also how to produce a better sound. I'm not sure if you mean a better sound while playing vibrato or just a better sound in general. What are your thoughts on vibrato, Michelle?
So I think vibrato is really handy to learn. I just had a student asking me about that the other day. So in the classical clarinet world, at least in North America, when I was first studying, there was kind of a bit of a snobbish assumption that clarinet vibrato was very lowbrow clarinet playing, and that it belonged to those people who did jazz music. And, it was considered a little bit of, it's heretical if you're going to play vibrato. Having said that, I think times are certainly changing, and jazz clarinetists use vibrato really well and really effectively. It's always been a part of the klezmer and the folk tradition for clarinet. So I think it is a big part of the clarinet tradition, and we should learn how to do it. There's kind of two main ways to achieve vibrato. One is using your air, kind of a woo, 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 woo. That's sometimes how flautists like to do vibrato. Pretty well, most clarinetists that I know who use vibrato a lot follow the same vibrato that saxophone players use, which is a jaw vibrato, and that's what Laurie's interested in. The simple way that I was taught jaw vibrato, and, Sean, jump in if you have any suggestions here, but when I was first learning it, I was taught that a nice way to help gain control of it is just to set a metronome. I should have one handy, but I'm just going to make one here. And just imagining that you're saying wow, wow, wow with your jaw moving. It can be quite exaggerated when you're just trying to give your body the feel for it. You just play it. So I'll just take a note and do that for you. So I'm going to overdo it. You'll hear quite a big range, but it's just to help my jaw get used to it. So I might do quarter notes. Kind of like I'm going, wow. Now it's making my pitch go all over the place. It's because I'm doing it really largely. Usually we do it more subtly. And then you can try eighth notes. Right? Then I might go to triplet. And then maybe I'll think 16th notes. And that sort of gets me starting to feel what it feels like to move through there. So initially, I would do it very rhythmical like that. And then if you listen to players who play with vibrato that you love, whether it's a clarinetist or an oboist or a bassoonist or anything, you'll notice that people will vary the intensity of the vibrato from slower to faster to add expression. And I think that that's fun to experiment with, but it's mostly through listening to other players and being inspired that we figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I don't know why, but the whole clarinet community, like some people are really, really polarized about this. It's come up on the podcast a couple of times, and some guests are like, they think it's a heinous crime of some sort, and other people are totally open to it. Like Michelle was saying, I think it really depends on context and the type of music that you're playing and the people that you're with. A lot of times, it's odd because like a flute player in the orchestra might play with vibrato, but if the clarinet player were to start doing it, it would kind of cause some sort of panic for some reason amongst the people around them. I think it does have a lot to do with kind of which school you were brought up in as far as the clarinet playing goes. But another way to practice that is to use your tuner with the metronome and to try and control, even just with the barrel and mouthpiece, the interval that you're going while bending the pitch. So maybe you can bend a quarter tone today, maybe a half tone tomorrow, and then maybe a whole tone, but try and be deliberate about where it's going. And then you can sort of control also how wide the vibrato is. And a lot of it's really just coming from relaxing the pressure on the jaw and letting it kind of open like that. I should have mentioned at the beginning, I'm not going to be doing much playing today, if any, because I had a really bad hand injury, and it's preventing me from playing entirely right now. So we'll let Michelle maybe demonstrate some of the stuff like that. But that's my thoughts on vibrato anyways.
That sounds great. And actually, Sean, you just reminded me of something I meant to say right off the bat. So I'm just going to be very transparent about this up front. If you do follow Sean's Clarinet Podcast or Facebook or anything, you might have seen this photo he posted. I don't have it here to share, but it was awful. Like he fell on a glass and deeply embedded it into his hand. And to me, it was every clarinetist's nightmare. And even though he's appearing here very jovial and calm, like seriously injured his hand to where he hasn't been able to play for quite a while, and it will be quite a while before he will be. So very transparently, I'm going to say part of my motivation for doing this question and answer is I have some fundraiser ideas that I'd like to put forward at the end of this to help support Sean and the podcast. And I think I have a really cool idea that benefits all of you who are watching too. So we'll get to that at the end. But I just want to say that's part of my reason for being here is I really think Sean does some great stuff and the clarinet community supports each other. So want to support that because he should.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. Anyway, on to the next question.
Yeah.
Brian says, just getting into clarinet since high school, wondering what music method books are good to use. How about you, Sean? Any thoughts off the top of your head?
So the first thought that comes to my mind would be, I don't mean this to be in a weird way or anything, but I would ask your teacher because depending on which teacher you're studying with, or maybe you're studying with Michelle online, but they're all often going to have a different idea of what method books they like to use. I know I have different ones I prefer for different levels than other people. And depending on the student, sometimes I even like to frame the method book for them, right? So seeing as you're coming back from high school, I would assume that you have the basics like reading music down and things like that. So I would probably start you somewhere a little different than a very beginner who couldn't even read a music staff. That being said, I really like the Galper series. I think they have an engaging selection of little short pieces, and the lessons are laid out rather sensibly throughout the book. And if you're in Canada, I would actually recommend supplementing that with the new Royal Conservatory series, probably the preparatory 1 to 4 book. And what I love about that book is it's kind of like a best of selection of a lot of great clarinet books. So if you get to the bottom of the page, or sorry, if you get to the exercise, if you look at the bottom of the page and if you like it, you can actually see what method book it came from. Oh, there it is. Yeah. But you can see what method book it came from. And then you could say, all right, I really like, the Galper, there's some Galper stuff in there. And then you could go out and buy that book and then have all the exercises. So I know some of the ones in there are from the Odd Meter Etude book. There's some ones from James Ray has a lot of fun, more jazzy kind of stuff you might like. There's a composer who wrote some Chalumeau register exercises. It might also be James Ray. They seem to really like James Ray. He must be Canadian.
He's British, actually.
Is he British? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Galper was the guy he was from Edmonton though. So that's why they kind of, well, his stuff is also good, but they like to feature some Canadian works in there. But that's a great series. I would highly recommend that. But also make sure to ask your teacher and kind of the direction they want you to go in and where they feel you'd be comfortable to start with.
Yeah, and so I just posted the name of that series that Sean's referring to, the Royal Conservatory Music. They have a series of etude books, like Sean said, are taken from a bunch of great etude books. They also have a repertoire that goes in grade levels. So roughly, I think they go from what they call preparatory, which is you only know how to play like 6 notes, to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, up to grade 10 or so. And the repertoire books are great. It's just some famous or not so famous clarinet solos. They come with piano parts. I don't have a link off the top of my head, but I put the name in there. And I know there's a US distributor. I'm sure there's worldwide distributors for them. They're extremely well done. And so,
actually, sorry to interrupt. On my website, I have an extensive review I did of the series, and I believe there's links to purchase them all. I'll double check after this that they're all going to the right place. But
awesome. So yeah,
you can read a bit about it.
Go to the Clarinet website to get a link to it. That's great. Awesome.
There's actually an episode with Peter Stoll and Derek Chu of the RCM too. We talk about the series for about an hour.
So I have a suggestion, Sean, for you and I. I'm going to try and make notes. I'd love to send out a replay of this, and maybe in the replay we'll put in some of these links, like the link to the interview with Peter Stoll. I went to school with him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but we've chatted online a few times. Yeah,
really nice guy. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Brian, there's so many great books out there. I mean, hopefully we gave you some ideas there, but all right. Larry, how to articulate cleanly, especially in the clarion register? Well, that's an easy question. No, I think, so in my experience, one of the biggest challenges people have when they're tonguing is that we all have this kind of innate instinctive habit to stop blowing when we tongue. And if we could just take our clarinet out of our mouth and here we get this two. Now, usually it's not exaggerated is what I'm doing. It might be subtle, but it's enough that we're letting our air pressure down, and then we just don't have enough zing to support the sound. And so when we're up high in the high register, clarion register, everything's exaggerated. So if it's a little bit of a bad habit, you might not notice the effects so much in the low register, but it's going to be emphasized when you're up high. So so there's sort of two issues to cleanly. One is the note speaking easily and right away? So if that's an issue for you, then what I suggest is you practice just really paying attention to your breath and keeping your air much more solid and steady. You know, even if it's, I don't know, let's say I took a high A, and just for most of you, this would be quite easy, but it's a way to help build awareness. Okay, what's my air doing? I would blow it really steadily. And this is my breath. I'm really just, instead of going, I'm really trying to keep my air as even if I'm playing a long note, until I feel like every note is starting right away. Because sometimes we get held up by a delay to the notes, and that throws us off. When it comes to speed, that's if it's like clear, you know, clear is how can I go fast enough? I'm personally a big proponent of trying to do stop tongue staccato when we have to go very fast. If it's something where, you know, ta 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 ta, it's really fast, that's learning stop tonguing. And I don't have time to teach that whole technique right now. Like the quick version is your tongue hits the reed to start the note, it comes back to end the note, and you're still blowing. So you always have great air pressure, and then it pops off, and it becomes a very short one. When we send a replay, I'll post a link to like just a YouTube video that kind of gives you an easy exercise on stop tonguing. And I think that would be helpful to learn if you're not familiar with it. Yeah, Sean, I'm long-winded. Please jump in.
That's fine. Yeah, I have two quick thoughts. I'm going to try and be quick so we can, there's lots of questions coming in. Wow. My biggest thought on tonguing, in addition to what Michelle said, of course, all that as well, but you have to realize that tonguing is not like playing a drum. Like you're not making a sound from striking the reed. The sound actually happens when your tongue comes off the reed. So especially in the clarion register, you want to make sure that maybe instead of thinking of like a T sound or two or whatever you've been using, you change that to a D or an L at the beginning, and be a lot lighter with the attack on the reed. But when it comes off, it starts to vibrate. If you don't do that, a lot of times you'll get kind of a chirp before the note. And then a problem a lot of people have in the clarion register is they start to move their chin for some reason. And then you get kind of, we were just talking about the vibrato, but you start to have this like little scoop into the notes, especially when you are above like the G, 3-finger G, the high one. That starts to happen a lot. And there's another sort of concept there that goes into voicing. Like you have to make sure that your pressure on the bottom of the reed is really good, and the air is staying nice and fast and focused. But those all should help. But the big takeaway is like you need to lighten up the way you're tonguing, and almost to the point at the top notes, kind of like you're fake tonguing. Like it's not a big impact on the reed. But there's many ways to describe this. A lot of people I've heard as many ways to kind of tongue correctly as anything else, you know. So
yeah, awesome. All right, so I do want to say that I love all these great questions that are coming in. I don't think we're going to answer all of them. We're just not going to have time. We're going to answer as many as we can. I had a thought, though, that I'm going to save all of these questions and follow up with trying to get to them all later. So perhaps my next YouTube episode will just be like answering questions. You know, whether Sean can join me or not.
I'd be happy to, yes.
Yeah, so perhaps we'll do as much as we can today, and then Sean and I might just get together and we'll bomb through as many of these questions as we can, and then we can post them on the Clarinet site, on the Clarinet Mentors YouTube channel. So be patient with us if we don't get to you today. I'm recording all your questions, so keep writing them, and we'll do the best we can here.
So the next one we got here, I actually see several like this. It's kind of about tone and pitch. So the biggest thing how to improve pitch, that's the question. So the pitch, I mean, you do have to do a lot of work with the tuner. The place I would start personally is with your mouthpiece and barrel, and make sure that when you play on those two pieces of your instrument, that the note is consistent. It's going to be around a sounding A flat, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. But if you're getting something totally off from that, then it's probably a problem with your embouchure. That being said, there are different mouthpieces that have different sort of pitchings. Like you may not realize it if you just go to Long McQuaid and you buy like let's say a Van Doren 5RV or something. there's different versions of that. And for some people, they might be better suited to the higher pitch one, which is just the standard version. And some may prefer the lower pitch version, which is called the 13 American series. I have a few mouthpieces, and I tend to just own both because I like to sometimes play with different instruments that I need to play higher pitch. So beyond that, you just got to make sure that you're always giving a healthy kind of air and really keeping the kind of pressure on the mouthpiece that sustains the type of sound that I was just talking about at the beginning. And then you also have to realize that there's certain notes in the clarinet that you're going to have to adjust to. It's not like playing a piano where you can just sort of hit all the notes and they sound right away. You're going to have to do a lot of work with your ear and kind of hearing the note that you want before you play, and that will help you to really get the intervals evened out.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with everything Sean just said, and I'll toss out there for people who are maybe a bit less experienced that one of the tuning habits that tends to happen when you're still relatively new to the clarinet is that you get quite flat in the high register, and a lot of times that's related to what we call voicing, which is where your tongue sits inside your mouth when you're not tonguing, just kind of where it sits. And very quickly, a great exercise I'd like to toss out there, if you're relatively new to it, is in the high register, just playing your high G, just your left hand to A, to B, to C, and sitting down with the tuner in front of you. If your tongue is sitting too low in your mouth, you're going to see your tuning needle, I can't remember which direction this goes. Is that going down, Sean, or up?
It's going for my left.
Okay. So anyway,
I guess it's going, yeah.
Okay. If we see it going flat, then almost guaranteed your tongue is sitting too low in your mouth for our traditional classical symphonic clarinet sound. I can just sort of demonstrate that. So the model I like to use with my students, if you're going for more of a classical sound, is that your tongue is in a he position. And if I play those notes in a he position, my instrument's cold, I might be low, or maybe my instrument's hot, I'm sharp, but that they should be pretty consistent with each other. Now, our tongue doesn't like to sit in that position naturally. It's usually lower. So if I let my tongue go lower, you're going to hear that I start to get flat. And that's just my tongue. So that's just a warning sign. If you find your high notes are really flat, experiment with voicing, and that can help you to be more consistently in tune.
Just to quickly touch on another question I see farther down, kind of about the same thing. He's asking about with a 65 millimeter barrel and the A clarinet pretty flat, what do you do? That to me does sound like a voicing issue or some sort of problem with either the mouthpiece or reed. You have to remember that the clarinet is designed generally to play in tune after it's warmed up. So if your first inclination is to go out and buy a shorter barrel, before you do that, you really should think about, wait a minute, is this actually the problem? Or what does my mouthpiece and barrel look like? How is my embouchure? How are all these different things, right? Because especially with like a buffet, I mean, that's a rather expensive instrument. And there's probably not really a way, unless there's a problem with it, that it's going to be playing that out of tune just outside the box. So there is a chance that you could have a European version, an RC bore clarinet, which might be a little different with its tendencies. But the R13 series should generally over here play in tune once it's set up properly.
And if you're consistently always the same amount sharp, it could just be you have a mouthpiece that plays high in your setup. And then I would say, if you love your mouthpiece and how it sounds in response, get a longer barrel. Yeah,
then you can. Yeah, if one element, that's a good point. Actually, when I play with marimba, like on my CD, for example, I had to get up to 442 and sometimes 444 for the vibraphone. So I ended up using a high pitched mouthpiece and a shorter barrel in combination, and it worked really well. So just to kind of be flexible with it. So.
That sounds great. I see two questions here that seem to me to be related, so I'm going to read them out. One is from Dave. He said, I have a problem that's recently started. I've only been playing about 3 months. My sounds are improving, but at times when I play the mid C and D, reed suddenly goes into self-vibration, not a squeak, but a low frequency like a kazoo. And then Carol says, how do I stop the growl that sounds before my high notes? And I think the growl and the kazoo, I'm guessing, are the same effect. Super common. And Dave, congratulations for playing only a few months. That's awesome. You'd be amazed at how quickly you're going to improve, which is kind of fun. But if we're trying to play a high note and we get that low growly sound, probably something like this. You get that low sound. to me, that's a signal that the note doesn't have enough support. And so you need to figure out where it's lacking support. Usually it's air support. The clarinet really likes to have very fast, compressed air stream. So sometimes just, if we could imagine, we could see air coming out of your mouth like water out of a hose. Instead of a fine mist, we want more of that power wash, a fast air. But the other thing I'll check, especially with you, Dave, since you're relatively new, we start playing clarinet on a relatively low reed strength. I don't know what you're playing, but 2.5. And as we start playing in the high register, every mouthpiece responds differently, so I'm giving real generalities here, but usually a slightly stiffer reed makes those high notes a little bit easier to play. So sometimes it's the reed wimping out. Especially if someone's trying to tongue those top notes and the high notes wimp out altogether, sometimes going up a size in a reed is going to help. If it's too strong a reed, it's just going to feel really hard to play and it's going to sound airy and fuzzy. But so Carol, not sure how long you've been playing, but it's probably an air issue. So I would say just really work on fast air. Sean, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I also agree with the fast air concept, but I was recently at a masterclass with Frank Cohen, and he has the absolutely opposite idea of the air. And, I realized we're describing, I think, the same thing. I never got there with him in our conversation. Maybe I'll address it when I chat with him later. But anyways, for me, I think what he was trying to get at is the air should come from a warm place. And what he means by that is that your diaphragm, it's got to come from down in the bottom. So it's like that kind of feel, like you're warming your hands in the winter. But the thing is that it has to get very small to go through the end of the clarinet. So it should come from a warm place, but it should become cool in your embouchure. That's the way I think about it. That's the way I kind of like it. And I like to think of more like an air laser or something like that that's going all the way down the end of the clarinet. And in the higher registers, again, this doesn't work for everybody, and I've been told that this is a bad analogy, but you know what? It works for me. So I like to think about different angles that I'm blowing across the reed. So like for very low notes, it's kind of like warmer and down the instrument. But for higher notes, I'm kind of aiming almost as if I'm like blowing out a candle that's right in front of my face. And I find that I'm not actually changing the direction of the air. It's just an idea of like kind of how it feels to shape the mouth maybe inside. And I think that will really help with that. But the growling thing, again, you do have to find a reed, just like she's saying, that works really well with your setup. And depending on your mouthpiece, you might even want to try a softer reed. It's possible you could be on one that's too hard as well. So anyways, I see another one here. It says, after a practice session, do you always swab, I guess, yeah, and take your clarinet apart, even if you're going to do another practice session later in the day? I would say absolutely. It depends on the type of clarinet you have. If it's plastic, it's not going to be the end of the world. However, it could get in there and damage your pads, right? But with wooden clarinets, that's a severe problem because the moisture sitting in there is just going to, over time, it's going to really affect the quality of the wood, and it could lead to cracking. There's many times where in the middle of a concert, I'll swab my clarinet out several times, let alone at the end of practice. So I would say every single time, even sometimes several times while you're playing. And the real point of contention that I've heard is whether or not you should swab from the bell or here. We actually there's a debate episode of the podcast coming out where I debate this for about 20 minutes with a guy, and pretty interesting topic actually. And we came to some weird conclusions. But anyways, so I now swab through the bell based on that conversation. But before I used to swab through here because my logic was I didn't want the water to shift. And when I turn it around, all of a sudden it goes in different tone holes. So I don't know. There's many sort of ideas about it, but that's sort of my thought. But definitely swab it out for sure. And use a good swab. Don't use one of those swabs with that little metal piece on the end. Those will destroy the inside of your instrument. They'll just chew it up. So get something that's got a nice weight, but the weight is covered in felt or whatever material the string is made out of. Wow, I got really passionate about that. Wow.
It's good. No, I agree. The only thing I'm going to throw into the debate about top or bottom is I still remember doing a concert with a colleague, and we had like a 40-bar rest. And then this huge clarinet duet came in, and she ran her swab in through the bell, and it got stuck so much. And then there's no way to grab it because it was totally stuck inside her clarinet. And it was a show where we only had B flats in the first half. And for some reason, I had pulled up my A clarinet and warmed it up before the show, and I had it sitting there, and we have like 2 measures left, and she grabbed my A clarinet, threw her mouthpiece on, and transposed this highly technical duet we played for the next, 50 measures, and it stopped, and we both looked at each other and went, how'd you do that?
Wow. It's funny because that was an argument that I heard too, is what if it gets stuck? It's harder to take out, right? So yeah. I don't know. I'm really torn on that.
If you only have 38 bars rest, go from the barrel, but if you have more time, then maybe from the bottom. Okay, off topic. I digress, but it was, to this day, Karen, I'm amazed at you if you're watching this. Yeah.
So I see the best way to break in a new reed. I'm not the person to ask about that. I'm not fussy with my reeds, and half the time I use plastic reeds. I just don't care. I don't spend any time breaking them in. I play them, and if they work great, I don't know, I'll adjust them a bit with my reed geek or something, but I don't have any like ritual or soaking them and singing to them or whatever a lot of people do. I don't know. I'm not that into that.
Yeah, I went to a whole lecture on this at the Clarinet Fest, I think it was last summer, and I quickly realized that for 40 people in the room, there were 40 different rituals that worked.
Maybe 45.
Yeah, maybe. So the only thing I'll say is I find that a brand new reed gets waterlogged more quickly than an older cane reed. So I generally tell my students the first time you play on a new reed, maybe just play on it for about 15 minutes, let it dry out overnight, and just gradually increase it. I don't think that improves the life of the reed. It's just I find if the tip starts getting see-through, and it's a sign that it's a bit waterlogged, and in that moment it's not going to vibrate as well until it's dried out to the next day.
Yeah, and it's not to say there's not a right way to break in a reed or work on them, and honestly I probably should spend more time with it, but I don't know. I just find that I've been using different kinds of reeds lately that I find are more consistent anyways. I don't know. It's just never something I've really worried about too much. I find the reeds, I can work with them. I can kind of adjust to them a little bit, or even just making sure they sit flat on the mouthpiece with something like a reed geek is really important. If they're warping, they're not drying correctly, so you need to store them in a better reed case. And you should try to keep them at some sort of steady humidity. That can be a big problem too. But I don't know. I've always felt that any time spent fussing with reeds is sort of better spent practicing. The reeds that you like or don't like, life is too short to work with really bad reeds and, spend 3 hours bringing some horrible reed into existence that, might even not really want to play that great anyways. So sorry, I don't have a better answer for that.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. All right, Naomi says, how do we breathe efficiently in a work with long, fast passages with no rests or held notes, like Rose 4 from the 40 studies? Sometimes we have pieces of music where there doesn't seem to be any good breathing spot, and that's a challenge for us as wind players. I find that when I'm taking time to have in my warm-up some kind of long tones warm-up where I'm just really paying attention to how I use my air, that I start to use my air more efficiently, and then I can just go further in one breath. So, there are lots of variations on that. Bill Jackson has one where you just play scales in whole notes, and you do one octave in one breath with the metronome, starting around 88, 84, and then your goal is to slow your metronome down to as slowly as you can do it comfortably. The goal is not to do it till you pass out. It's just to be mindful and to blow smoothly and long, and it sort of becomes this Zen-like, very calm warm-up where then you can also notice, okay, am I relaxing my body? Are my fingers calm? Am I getting really smooth connections? But I think when we have some conscious warm-up to focus on breathing and blowing, we get more efficient with it. Having said that, in a fast piece of music, we also have to be really efficient at taking a lot of air extremely quickly. Just a quick, deep breath, and we can practice making sure we're not. My example I just gave, it was not a great one because I had some tension. We just want to be relaxed and fill in, right to our belly button, just sort of fill in deeply when we do breathe, so that we're getting a full tank.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that one.
Okay.
So the next question, sorry.
No, I was going to say the other thing, too, is I'm a big fan of putting in artistic breathing spots. So if you're all by yourself playing an etude, you might as well build in some little rits and breathing marks if you can get away with it. That's fun.
Actually, that is one thing I would say about the Rose book especially, is that, and I even watched a seminar with Anthony McGill when I was in Chicago about a month ago, and I think he might have played Rose 4, actually. And is that the one that's all 16th notes in G major?
can't remember.
Anyways, I think that's the one. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just like a lot of the studies. But anyways, he was really being flexible with the timing and the phrasing, and everyone just puts the Rose studies to a metronome, and that's not really a great way to practice them. They're very musical, and just because something's constant 16th notes doesn't mean you can't push and pull and take a breath and sort of give it a chance to breathe. So decide on the phrasing, where you're going to put little breaths, and don't look at it like something you need a circular breathe for, or play, exactly to 120 beats on a metronome or whatever. It's going to sound totally amusical. So try and be super flexible. Try and take it to the extreme, and almost like you're, I don't want to say mocking it, but really trying to find something else in there, different rhythms, and play it backwards. find different ways of finding the phrase.
Yeah, you're going to get 4 great actors playing Hamlet all very differently, and that's how you should be playing your clarinet. Your way, your expression is really important. Yeah.
So the next thing I see here is note above high C, like D, E, F. I'm betting you mean like the altissimo register. They're sounding very sharp and harsh. Is that due to not properly using belly force? That could be just, I don't know how long you've been playing, but that's a very common problem with beginners, is those notes that are up there, they feel really, or they sound really harsh. I would focus on trying to make them, by kind of doing long tones, trying to make them sound sweet and round instead of sort of harsh and loud, and trying to play them as soft as you possibly can. There's a really good exercise I can't do right now, but basically you take a note like a low B flat and add your register key to it while you're blowing nice air, and that'll take it up to the clarion register. And then you remove your first finger and add the pinky key and sort of just let the high D sing out of that. And you can do that with all your notes, or many of the notes anyways, in your scale, and try not to make them pop out. And if they don't sound it right away, try to ease into them a little bit. And then once you've held them for a couple seconds, try to ease out of them and see if you can start them from what I would call like niente or nothing, and coming in, growing a little bit, swelling, holding, sustaining, never getting harsh or intense like that, and then sometimes going away. But there are times where composers like Mahler especially would want you to make those notes sound harsh and kind of ugly and really intense. So in a way, you want to kind of be versatile and have different colors in the sound. So I think it's good that you found the harsh version. Maybe try and turn it around and find the sweet version too.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that, Eric, because I know you are, I've heard Eric play. He's a bit of a more experienced player and is in a band with some tougher repertoire. That sometimes when our altissimo notes sound harsh, it's because in our effort to play them well, and we know they're hard, we end up biting down on the reed too much, and that can bring the pitch up. Well, especially D tends to be sharp anyway, but just to make sure you're not biting, Eric, and I always will give myself a reminder to really round the corners of my mouth in so that the altissimo has that more round, gentle sound. And then, of course, the support. If we take, the biting does give us an effective support, which is why we do it without realizing it. It helps some things. It helps make it feel more even. However, there's bad sides to it. It can make the tone pinched. It can make it harder to do dynamics. So if we take away that biting, then the air support has to come from our air supports, where it comes from our breath. And I totally agree with what Sean said, like trying to play them starting from nothing, super, super soft, is one of the best ways to make sure your air support is there to help them out.
So next I see pros and cons of adjustable barrels. I've never used one. Have you?
No, Marilyn.
I don't know about that. Sorry, I can't comment.
Yeah, me neither. Sorry, Marilyn. We'll say we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they work. I think that's the one that has like a big metal ring in the center. A lot of people are using them now. I don't know how they work. I've never looked into them.
A screw, I think. I think they screw up.
Yeah, okay, I don't have any idea.
Do you have one, Marilyn?
I do not have one. Because I play with a violinist and we play long periods, I was thinking that maybe I could, I go one way and she goes the other as we go over time. So I thought maybe something like that would help me keep in tune, but then I didn't know what it would do to the tone quality. That was the issue. They advertised one on Amazon that I was looking at.
Well, I'd be curious to hear how it goes if you try it. I mean, you're right. Clarinets go sharp and string players go flat. So that's always a challenge you have when you're playing with string players. Usually I get it, if it's not too extreme, I usually just pull my barrel a little bit as it warms up to bring the pitch down throughout a rehearsal. But if anyone else has experience with that, write a note in the chat box. Be interesting to see.
Yeah, you got to be careful with those kind of solutions, though, because, like, let's say, for example, you're trying to play a low F and you've pulled out 4 millimeters. That note's flat as its tendency anyways, so now you've created a beast, sort of,
Yeah.
that is not really going to be fixable in any way. So if that was a solution, and it's not, to just sort of like go from B flat clarinet to A, you would just put on a really long barrel. But the problem is that it changes the physics of the whole instrument, so there becomes a point where the barrel is too long or too short to actually work properly for a lot of notes. So unless you're prepared to deal with a lot of inconsistency in the registers, I don't know. But I think that the barrel that I've seen people using is probably very good, but I think it's probably quite expensive. I wouldn't use something that was not something I really prefer for a barrel, because it's just such an important part of the instrument anyhow. Like, I wouldn't go for the convenience of adjustability for like a low price. I don't know how much that one was or what brand it is. I can't say, but I would match the barrel to the feel and what I want, and the pitch, and not so much the adjustability factor wasn't really something I would weigh into it, really. If you do pull out a long way, though, you can get tuning rings that do kind of help some of the problems I was just talking about. Yeah, tuning rings. Yeah, they work pretty well. Yeah. Hi, I'm here. Oh, from Clarinet Mentors and Clarinet. Oh, that's Susan. Hi, Susan. What's the next one? Okay, we're skipping ahead here. So Michelle, this one's for you, asking about the opinions on the Klose and Baermann methods.
Yeah, they're both very standard methods that a lot of people use. Baermann third division, which is all scales and arpeggios and patterns, I think is one of the most complete clarinet finger pattern resources that we have. My first teacher put it in front of me to the point where I rebelled against it, but now I see the wisdom of what he was doing, that those patterns really do, learning those finger patterns, become the toolbox to help us sight read better and to have more fluid technique. As much as I like them, I don't use Klose and Baermann a whole lot other than those scales when I'm teaching, even though they're very good. I think they have some great technical exercises in there, and if you enjoy that music, I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like those books. Every clarinet player should just at least have them around, for playing, and even sight reading. They're, good sight reading practice. Tough, but good.
Mm-hmm.
So next question, how do you practice difficult passages, and what is a good approach? Well, there's many, many good approaches to that, but difficult doesn't necessarily mean fast, I guess. But if the passage is fast, you've got to slow it down. And really, I know that everyone always says play slowly, and people kind of, okay, I've heard that 1,000 times, but that really is the solution to a lot of this stuff. And one thing I like to do, or have students do, is to play in different rhythms that's on the paper. So maybe if it's in 16th notes, you try it in like a swing 8th feel. Try and play everything on the paper as a quarter note at like 60 beats a minute, no matter what it is, just with a tuner, and really making sure you're hitting everything and comfortable with the notes before you play it. For more advanced students, I'll even have them try to read it backwards once they've read it. I know it seems weird, but when you challenge yourself to think about it in different ways, it starts to sort of come together, and you can slowly increase the speed over time. And you will get it up to tempo if you've practiced effectively. Don't let yourself make mistakes, but also don't stop constantly. You've got to listen to what you're doing and really kind of pay mindful attention, and never practice mindlessly. Don't just sit there with the TV on and stare across the room and work on your scale. Like, think about what you're doing and place your fingers and yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Sean said about don't practice mindlessly. I think so often when we practice something that's challenging and we make a little mistake, our instinct might be to stop and redo it. Sometimes we make that same mistake and we keep going, but we tend to learn our mistakes really quickly and really thoroughly. And so, be mindful. If you make a mistake, you need to do the work to kind of erase that mistake from your and to make the same mistakes over and over again. So I love the idea of playing in different rhythms. I love the idea of taking a small section. And this kind of tunes into Susan Williams' question, like, what do you do when you have way more practice to do than you have time available? Do you just focus on a few sessions, do them repeatedly, move on, cover as much as possible? How do you balance practicing music with practicing technique? I mean, there's a lot of questions there, Susan, but I would say we've probably anyone who plays with a group has probably been in a situation where you have some hard music that you have to learn and there's a deadline for learning it. And so you want to be as efficient as you can. I think those technical sections, I agree with Sean, we need to slow them down. And for me, not just slow, but all the different rhythms, be really efficient with how we play it. I think you can learn on almost any hard section fairly quickly if you have the patience to do a short section in lots of different rhythm patterns and just repeat it. It doesn't take that long to do, but to be patient enough not to learn the mistakes in there. And usually you don't need to practice a whole piece start to finish. If you're in one of those situations where you don't have time, you just focus on the hardest bits.
Yeah, I would say that my answer to this second question we've kind of shifted to, which is like what to do if you have more music than time. That happens a lot with like orchestral playing, for example. You might be playing like I don't know, Mahler 5 or something, which is 90 minutes long. You're not going to really sit down and practice every single moment of that piece for the entire time. It reminds me of something that Michael Lowenstern said actually yesterday in a video I was watching. He played Flight of the Bumblebee on his bass clarinet, and someone in the comments said, "How long did it take you to learn that?" And he said, "Short answer, an afternoon. Long answer, 40 years. And what he meant by that is that he has the foundational technique to sit down and learn it in an afternoon. So what you have to realize is that somebody who has been playing for 20 years is going to look at that piece and it's not going to look like so much music because maybe there's only 10 bars they have to work through at home, and that music that they have to work through, they can do it in a shorter time because they have the tools and the technique to draw and to do it. So although it doesn't really help in the instance like of trying to cram practice one single piece, I would say that unfortunately the real answer to that is you kind of have to put in the time in your technique and so you can draw on your foundation of skills when you need them.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's too philosophical of an answer.
No, I use the expression we have our musical toolbox. So every rhythm pattern that we learn comfortably goes in our toolbox. And then when we have new music with that rhythm, we already know it. It's kind of a pattern. It's easy for us to do. Every finger pattern we learn, every scale pattern, every arpeggio helps us then, if you were really good at a chromatic scale, you could learn Flight of the Bumblebee quite quickly because you've already programmed those patterns into your body.
Well, and try to look at the music too as instead of a bunch of notes, like let's say you've got a passage of 16th notes on the paper, try and see it as, well, what scale is it? What is it that you're familiar with? It might be a lot of 16th notes, but if you've practiced all your scales, odds are that you've seen that pattern before. Just kind of analyze what it is. Oh, look, there's a bar of thirds in G major going from G to G. Oh, great, I've done that 1,000 times. And then you can sort of draw on that what you've done. Even if the rhythm's kind of different, you can sort of use that as part of what you're doing. So
that sounds great. Susan has a question. I often get a th sound when I start a note, not the same as a grunt, especially noticeable when I have to begin a note softly. I suspect I'm not doing something proper with my breath or tongue, but can't seem to figure out how to start a note completely cleanly. So, Susan, I'm actually not entirely sure what you mean by your question. If you unmute yourself, can you clarify that a bit? If you're here.
I'm here. You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's just basically anytime I start any note soft, I hear it's like a tongue sound, and maybe my tongue is not releasing, maybe too much tongue is on the reed, but every time I try and do anything, I just hear a noise before I hear a sound. And again, this can be even the low register. It's not up in the high register where I'm hearing like your grunt or your growl.
Do you perceive that in recordings of yourself as well?
I probably need to investigate that.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking that is sometimes just the physical percussive nature of our tongue on the reed can go through our jawbone into our inner ear, and sometimes people are sensitive to hearing an articulation sound that's not perceived in the resonance of the room. So if that's true, you're lucky, then it's not an issue. It's just you're hearing it, but...
It might also be too much tongue on the reed. Like when you say th, to me that kind of implies that your concept of the tonguing, and I could be wrong, but is that kind of th feeling or sound, right? So I would change that to, there's a few you could try, but T is a good one because it really straightens out your tongue and is a very small tongue. And I like T as well because it keeps the tongue position high. And, contrary to brass playing where I think people prefer like a toe, the problem with toe is it drops your tongue in your mouth. So it has to move farther. So you want to try to move your tongue as little as possible and also use the very sort of tip of your tongue you want to think more like a gecko or something, or a snake, than like a frog. The frog tongue goes out and kind of blobs on the fly, but the gecko just sort of nabs it like that, you know? And that's sort of what I like to think about. I don't know if that answers the question very well.
Yeah, and one last thought I would have, Susan, is sometimes if our breath isn't fully there to support the note, you know, our tongue will come off the reed and there's just like a delay before the sound speaks. And if that's happening, if you sort of feel like there's the tongue sound and then it just takes a minute for the note to actually speak, then you should practice starting those notes with no tonguing, just a ha, ha, to make sure your body knows what it feels like to have the air support there, and then add your tongue back into it with the very light touch that Sean was talking about.
Actually, and part of playing clarinet is learning to sort of compensate for the slight delay that is just naturally a part of playing. So when you do tongue, like, it's important to recognize that it's not always immediate, especially on your setup. And you might want to practice starting the air with a metronome so that you learn how to time it up with that metronome. And even on the repeated tonguing, make sure that I don't know if the thaw sound is coming as you repeat the notes, but it sounds like it might just be when it's beginning. So I would think it might be a problem with the airstream. Make sure that the air, you could practice actually starting the air while your tongue's on the reed, and then sort of releasing the pressure in your mouth by pulling the tongue off the reed. And that should give the sound on its own. You might be trying to tongue with your air a little bit and going like that. Whereas really it should just be a kind of feeling like the pressure builds up in your mouth, the tongue is on the reed, and then when you pull off, it should just sound. And then you can work on synchronizing it later, but that might sort of help iron out the problem a little bit if I'm imagining it correctly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good question. Advice on plastic reeds. I don't know. We might have a disagreement here. We've never talked about this before.
No, I bought the European cup and I like them a lot, and I think it works better with I'm really liking those Legere European ones.
Yeah. What about Michelle? What do you think about these?
Yeah, well, I'm playing one right now, actually.
Yeah, let me grab something here.
I've talked about this to the clarinet mentors community before. I used to be very prejudiced against plastic reeds, and I was pretty open about it, and partly because every time I tried one, on my setup, they always sounded thin and not very full. The Legere European cut's the first one I found that has a sound I quite like. I mean, if I'm fully honest, my best cane reeds still have some warmth that I prefer. That's exactly what Sean's holding up there. However, especially a case like this where my clarinet's just sitting here and I'm blah, 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 and then maybe 20 minutes go by and I'm going to pick it up and try and play something. It doesn't warp. It's very reliable. So I use it more and more when I'm teaching because I know it's always going to be reliably pretty good.
Yeah, I actually wrote a really involved review about the plastic reeds, especially the new Legere signatures. And if you want to check out episode 15 of the podcast, that's with Tim Elvey of Legere Reeds, and we talk about them at length. It is really a personal decision. He tells a funny story in the podcast. I won't repeat it entirely here, but one player, I don't remember who it was, but they played a concert and they had told everyone that they switched to plastic reeds, and everyone came up afterwards and said, "Oh, you really need to switch back. Your sound has gone away. I don't like the tonguing. It sounds shrill." So he told everyone, "I'm going to switch back. You're right. I made a mistake." So he played the next concert and he asked everyone what they thought after he told them that he switched back. And they said, "Oh, you sounded so much better. Thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it." And then he turned his mouthpiece around and there was his plastic reed on there. So I like them for the same reason that Michelle does. I also really like them because Calgary is so incredibly dry in the wintertime that it's just not reasonable it's not always reasonable to have a wood one or a cane one. But if I have a concert, I'll almost always play cane. But if I have anything else to do, I almost always play the plastic. And my main conclusion in my blog post about this was, why do we feel like we have to take sides? Why can't we use both comfortably as tools that we have as musicians, right? So, but I like the plastic for the same reason as Michelle. Like when I'm teaching, I think it's pretty disrespectful of people's time to take 5 minutes and re-wet my reed every time I want to play. And honestly, it's less consistent to sit there and have to do that. So I can leave this reed on my mouthpiece all day long and it works great. Shameless plug, but if you are interested in the Legere European signatures, I am a distributor for them and they're all for sale on the website too. So the signature, I agree. The European signature is the one that I have really taken to. I don't use any of the other ones. I find they don't work for me, but that's probably just personal preference. more than anything else. They're worth trying. The one thing I see here, the question was, sorry, I'm going on and on about this. I tried once and wasn't pleased with the results. I would say that's why. I like to buy these reeds in a gradient. So I buy like 2 3/4, 3, 3 1/4, 3 1/2. And that way, depending on the day or the type of music that I'm playing or the resistance that I want, I can pick the one that works for me. That's how I've always sort of thought about it. And you do need to try more than one. You need to try several strengths and different types, which I know is expensive, but keep in mind, once you find the one you want, a company like Legere will generally swap it out if you have the receipt within 30 days to the one that works for you. So I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, at risk of giving Legere lots of returns, they do let you return, I think it's like 4 or 8 reeds a year if they're the wrong strength or something. Maybe it's 4, it used to be 8. And that way you can try it kind of at no risk to figure out the size that works for you, but they do come in quarter strengths.
Oh yeah, and they're super reasonable people. They just want you to be happy.
Yeah.
But again, that's not to discount cane reeds at all. I think that you should use both, and I think that you should be, able to accommodate either. But I'm not the kind of person who thinks that plastic reeds are somehow cheating or a joke or anything like that. I think that's not really a well-executed thought, really. But anyways, so.
Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, is that? Who's that?
Martin.
Oh, hi.
That's Martin, yeah. May I make a short additional comment to this? Because I started trying the Legeres a couple of months ago as well, and I share my opinion with you. Best canes are still better, but I use the Legere pretty often. But what I wanted to add is that I was very surprised when I went to the shop trying them out, that in the same strengths, they were very different. So like cane reeds, the quality is not the same with them. So everyone should take time and not think, oh, they're plastic, they're made from machines. Every reed should be the same. It's not like this. It's really worth the time to take 10 of those reeds and the strengths you need, compare, and find the one that is best for you.
Yeah, they're working on, that's a good point. They're working on the consistency. They're trying to make them more consistent, but they do have a little bit of slight difference. And that's one reason to buy several of the same ones again, like maybe get several strength 3 reeds so that you have one that, depending on the day or how much it's been played, it'll work for you, right? And one thing a lot of people don't know about these reeds, maybe you found this too, Martin, but after, they have about a 15-minute kind of, I would call it like a warm-up period. So although they do respond right away, they respond best after about 15 minutes. And then they have sort of a fade. So they'll get really easy to articulate and feel kind of blown out after about an hour. And then you should let it rest for 24 hours before you use it again. And the new versions, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, there's like a subtle spine inside of them. And that makes them a little more consistent and longer lasting. But they still are reeds. They've done a great job of trying to mimic what cane is like. And that includes things like the subtle differences Martin's talking about. So I think it's, good point.
I agree with Martin. Once I figured out the strength that works best on my setup, I got 5 of them, and 3 of them were good, and 2 of them didn't work so well. And Legere will replace them, which is nice if you don't mark them up or anything like that.
They can break. Some people think they can't break, but they still can break. They're more durable, but it's an expensive mistake if you don't take care of them.
Right. And they do eventually wear out, but they last a long time. They last longer than a cane would last.
Yeah, I just would insist in a shop that you are able to test them. I mean, it's uncommon compared to cane reeds. You cannot go to the shop and they want to test the reed. But with the Legere reeds, it should be possible, and you should do it.
Yeah, if your shop will let you do that, I think that's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I think it depends on the shop, but some would allow it, I think. It's a good point. So the next question here, man, we got tons of them. Sorry, we're trying to get through them here. But Michelle, do you want to address this one about the new clarinet for intermediate people? Which one are you on here?
Okay, read it out to me. I'm not there.
So the question is, when purchasing a new clarinet for an intermediate player who only plays for pleasure, what are some things to consider? You got to try instruments. I have a really hard time trying to recommend anything in this setting, but I would say you got to set your price that you're willing to pay, and you should try instruments in that price range, and you should also try used instruments in that price range. So let's say you have $1,000 or $1,500 to spend. I have found for students, one girl particularly last year, she, like every other student, wanted a brand new instrument. Oh, I really want something that's mine, that's new, whatever. And she actually ended up finding on Kijiji or something, which is, for those who don't know, it's like a online local marketplace kind of thing. She found an R13 B-flat clarinet that had basically been sitting in someone's closet since it was bought. I think she paid $1,000 and then about $500 for an overhaul. And that clarinet is going to be way better than anything she could have bought in that similar price range, brand new. So I don't know. I think my main thought would be sort of to get over the idea of, I would even get over the idea of professional level, intermediate level instruments. Just set a budget that you can afford, and then try instruments in that price range, and you might be surprised with what you find.
Yeah, and I would add, Linda, if you get a chance to try them, most what we would call intermediate and up, unless you're playing in a marching band or something, usually we're going to be getting a wooden instrument, and every piece of wood responds differently. So if you have the opportunity to play test it, if it's a reputable brand, lots of them. There's the Buffets, the Yamahas, the Selmers, the Bakuns, the LeBlanc, whatever it is. You're probably getting a decent instrument. Then you might just go for the one that has the beautiful sound that you love. And yeah,
it's a lot about sound and feel. Don't let people tell you that, oh, you have to get whatever. I mean, especially if it's only for your enjoyment. Even things like it might seem silly, but if you're just they always say with kids who are buying guitars, especially, like, let them pick a color that they like, because if you enjoy the instrument, you're going to practice it more. So maybe things like having silver plated keys, if that's really going to make you more interested in the instrument, then sure. But to add to that, though, there are other benefits to silver plated keys and things like that. So anyways, so the next question is, how's the cruise planning going? I'm interested in that as well.
So Clarinet Cruise, I had announced last year. Love the Clarinet Cruise will be a Clarinet Cruise from Vancouver to Alaska, where there'll be onboard master classes and all sorts of fun things, a couple different clinicians. We don't have a set date. We have a travel agent working on it, and we're now looking for around June of 2018. So I hope to have some details out, by March or so on that one. And I have a link on the Clarinet Mentors website at clarinetmentors.com. There's a Clarinet Cruise page. If you're interested in getting more updates, you can put your name in there, and I'll update you. Actually, I just want to mention now that since you thought of it, we had someone online from Nashville. Another upcoming Clarinet event, if you're anywhere close to Nashville, and I actually know several people on this call have already registered for it, that I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to actually share a link here for you if you're interested. Bakun Music is sponsoring an international clarinet competition. And what the clarinet competition is for young upcoming star players. And they have just a fabulous cast of artists who will be adjudicating this. And from what I've heard, they've got the preliminary applications in, that the level of talent is incredible. So part of this is they're doing a 3-day, playoff and all sorts of rounds of competition, but we were invited to have an amateur adult stream running at the same time. And so what we'll have is kind of a clarinet choir. We'll have master classes, adult clarinetists. I'll be running some of them. But what's really exciting is I just found out that they're taking some of the world's greatest clarinetists and loaning them to us in the Clarinet Mentors community. So Ricardo Morales is leading a master class, Corrado Giuffrati, David Schifrin, and John Schertl, who's co-principal of the Hong Kong Philharmonic. So it's 3 days. It's in Nashville. There'll be all of these great performers are doing recitals. So there's 4 full recitals we get access to. The competition, our own master classes, gear to try out. So anyway, there's the link. That's my plug. Love to have you join us if you're near there.
Awesome. If you want to learn more about that festival, I talked to Joel Jaffe. I think it was episode 35 of the podcast. Sorry, there's so many episodes.
I'm writing down the links you're going to have to give us later, Sean.
Okay. So next question. What is your opinion of the Silverstein ligatures? I don't know. I haven't really tried them. Have you? Oh, you're using one right now.
I love them.
They're probably great. They're expensive.
I mean, again, like all gear, it all responds differently on our setup, and I always encourage people to try things out. But I really like the Silverstein. There's lots of ligatures I like. Let me see if I have it handy. BG sent me some of their ligatures to play test, and see if I can hold those up there. These are pretty cool. I quite like them. They're called the Duo, and they come in all sorts of different metal facings. And again, I just had my students sit down, try them. You got to find what works well on your setup, but basically they do slightly affect tone and response. And I find the Silverstein is a very warm yet resonant tone. So my answer is try a bunch, see what you like.
Yeah, try it. Ligatures are very personal. You got to, again, pick the one that kind of works for you. And they'll have more to do with the way they feel to you than the way they sound to someone else. Ligatures are more about the response on the reed. So I tend to use one called the Peter Spriggs ligature, which was built by a guy in Penticton, actually, in Penticton, BC. And it has like a floating rail design that goes around the edge. And some people find it's way too kind of bright sounding, but I like it a lot. Mm-hmm. This is a good question. After using the register key, it is common for the clarinet to remain high for a couple of notes sometimes. Is it me or the clarinet, or can that just happen? You want to start with that one?
Sure. So, Linda, that's pretty common. In other words, we're trying to go from high register to low, but even though we take our thumb off the register key, we stay high. It's usually an indication that we're biting a little bit. And so depending what it is, if it's two notes that share the same fingering other than the register key, let's say I'm playing my clarion F and I'm going to go down to low B flat, because that's an overtone of the B flat, it's going to want to kind of hang out there. So sometimes if you're doing a big slur and you find that it helps to almost think about a little bit sort of opening your jaw as you go down. We can't do this very much or we're going to throw off our tone, but the same thing when we're going from altissimo into clarion. Sometimes we have that challenge. So another great way to test if you're biting, if you tend to bite, if you're not sure, this is a fingering I call the embouchure tester. It's thumb, register key, first two fingers, leave your next finger up, these two fingers. It's a really very unresponsive alternate fingering for the high G sharp on top of the staff. But it's super fussy, and if you're biting at all, that note will squeak like crazy. So, Linda, I'd encourage you to try that, and if it's squeaking, that might be a sign you're just biting down a little too much, and it'll help you round off your embouchure and figure that out. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's a voicing issue. Like, well, first of all, that's the way the clarinet works. The register key is in some ways actually unnecessary because you don't need it to get up to those pitches. One thing you might want to practice actually is your squeaks. So you practice playing the low note, like maybe a low G with 6 fingers, and then you practice just trying to get up to the higher note, but just by squeaking. And it's kind of a controlled squeak. So on a good day, you should be able to get 4 or 5 different partials on that note without touching the register key at all. So what I would think is that when you're trying to shift back down to the low register, you're still thinking of those high notes. You're still set up inside your mouth and the way that you're thinking about the notes to play those high sounds. And that's why the low ones aren't coming out. You might also want to try just very, very softly re-articulating on those notes, because once the clarinet starts to play up there, it kind of wants to stay there until something else sort of changes. But yeah, it's totally normal for that to happen. It's just something you have to work around.
That sounds great. So I'm looking at the time. We've been going an hour and 10 minutes. I so appreciate that 61 of us are all here live on the call, which is awesome. I think what we'll probably do is to take maybe 2 or 3 more questions. And then I realize we're not getting everybody. We will do a follow-up question and answer session to try and follow up. And we have some door prizes for you. And I want to talk about my little personal suggestions to help the Clarinet podcast and Sean's awful hand injury, which if you picture, you'll cringe. So, question from John: what's the best material for clarinet pads? How much difference does the material make? Sean, you have any thoughts on that?
No. I mean, people like different things. I mean, I have some cork pads on my upper joint. Some clarinets use these Valentino pads now. I don't know enough about repair to really comment too much on that, but I think it can affect the sound, like it does affect sort of the brightness, or some pads kind of have a more airy sound if they're a little leaky, especially, or if the bladder pads are kind of blowing up. But no, I don't have any real compelling thoughts on the matter.
I know some people who are very particular about the sound it creates. I'm not. I like the Valentino pads, which are more of a foam rubber, simply for their durability. That once they're on there, they don't tend to shift or change shape or leak very easily, and they last a long time. So that's kind of my preference, just because they're not fussy.
So we're going to skip a couple questions here. I think they've already been answered, if that's okay. Can we go down to Linda Ham's question? Mm-hmm. It says, hi, I started playing in April as the therapy for chronic pain. since 1994. I do cheat, but I want to do it properly so much. I play to keep happy, and it works. I tend to think that my progress is slow, but I'm happy. I'm not sure what your question is.
I think it's just maybe a comment.
Oh, sorry. Here I am reading a comment.
Which is great. And music, Linda, music is so good for our soul, right? I just think it's great. And I really admire you for continuing to focus in on your progress. I know you're very conscientious, and hopefully you're really enjoying it as we go.
Yeah, no, and I can relate right now with this injury. I had no idea that the way not being able to play would kind of affect me. It's not good. So there are ways to kind of work around that pain that you might be having. I don't know what kind of, if it's hand pain or just general or something like that. But if it is sort of a hand pain or something that you can work around certain things, you could try and invest in a neck strap that might take some of the weight off of your arms or your hands. Make sure you stay very relaxed with your technique. And just in all the ways, try and stay relaxed and let the music sort of be the medicine, I guess. If it's helping. A lot of people really do like to play, and for things like arthritis, actually, it can be really helpful to play something like guitar, which needs you to actually get the muscles and joints working and stuff like that. So good on you.
Well, I see that Linda put a note asking what the Read Geek was, and then handily put a link there already in there further down in the chat box.
This is what it is here. I'll show you. It's like a little reed tool, like a little knife that you use on the reed. Mine's kind of dirty right now. I guess I should wash it, but it looks like this. It's like a little black tool. It has some sharp ends there. You can scrape it on the reed and it kind of flattens it out, and it's just a little reed adjustment tool. So I see another question there about like the types of reed cases. Again, there's so many, it's so hard to go over it. I don't know. I use several types. I've got this is by a company called Bambu in Argentina right now. I like it because it has kind of a snap magnet type closure thing. I don't know. I've talked to them again on the podcast. They're pretty cool people. There's so many different types. I mean, D'Addario has one that you can insert little moisture packets into. I know a lot of people are a huge fan of that one. It keeps the reeds at a level humidity, but as long as it allows the reeds to dry flat and maybe allows you to keep them somehow humidified in some way, it's probably going to be fine. You could keep them in a Tupperware container with a little piece of glass or something if you wanted.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. Someone asked how Legere compares reed strength. I think they have a chart on their website. I find they're very similar to Van Doren, although I find they sometimes run a wee bit stiff. But it's different.
Yeah.
And Dennis says I had to go down a quarter strength. Yeah, so they sometimes run a little bit stiff.
Lots of questions here. Trying to skim here, see if there's any good ones.
What I so appreciate
is we
have the community here where people are answering each other's questions. So
yeah, I've noticed that. We should. It's so hard to watch. I've got like 75 new messages on my screen here to sift through here. Yeah. Thanks, guys. This is a lot of questions. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, Harry says his cats are his worst critics. Yeah, well, that's as bad as it gets. You're Harry. Okay. Well, I would like to, I want to share, I just want to thank everyone for all the questions, and I want to share what I am offering here as a chance to perhaps help Sean out. And this, I'll just toss it out to you in the clarinet community. If you want to jump in and support it, I appreciate it. So I'm going to post a link here. Actually, I should enter it right into the chat box. So I'm going to do that right now. Just let me find it here. Okay. I'm going to post a link. And what I've created is a page that has, if that worked, I think I just posted a link. Yeah. So it has I'll show you what it looks like. This is a page, a link that has, actually, I'm not sure that I have it. Okay, I'll find it in a minute. Anyway, what I've done is I've taken some of the most popular Clarinet Mentors courses, and what these are online courses. If you're not familiar with them, they're a series of video lessons, and they all have free samples. So I want to invite all of you to take advantage of as many of the free samples as you want, because I think there's excellent content. The free samples have some of my favorite videos from the course. And so that link I just posted, the members, Clarinet Mastery, takes us to a page that shows those, and I'll just bring that up so that we can take a look at it. And if you're at all interested in trying those courses, you just go to that link and you try the free videos. And if you decide to try one of the courses, 50% of all the money that we do is going to go to Sean and the Clarinet Podcast. And so this is like my fundraiser for him. So what you get are some courses that lots of people have used. And if any of you have taken any of the Clarinet Mentors courses and found one valuable, you could put that in the chat box so people considering it are going to know. I can now show you what that looks like. And
just so you know what that goes towards, with the podcast last year, for example, I traveled 4 times. I went to Clarinet Fest and met a whole bunch of people who have since become guests on the show. I recently went out to Chicago and put together sort of a video for the community there, and things like website hosting costs and all sorts of different. There's a lot that goes into it that sort of is behind the scenes, and it's really appreciated that Michelle is offering to help out in this way.
Well, and Sean adds a lot to the clarinet community at large. So,
oh, where'd you go? Oh, there you go.
Where'd it go? Okay, so sorry, what we're seeing here is what you'll see if you go to that link. Has a picture of Sean and I, and it says if you just try, you can try the sample lessons anytime. There's little blue buttons here. Click on Mastering Clarinet High Notes if high notes is an issue and you want to play those better, or better clarinet tone, or faster clarinet fingers if it's technique, or better clarinet articulation. So that's all on that page. I just posted in the chat link, and we'll send it out with the replay. So my hope is if you're kind of thinking of doing this anyway, then do it soon, and that helps continue allowing Sean to put effort into stuff that he's doing for free for all of us, and has been doing for free for all of us for quite some time now. How long has that been going on for, Sean?
It just celebrated 1 year, so there's over 50 episodes now, and the next 6 or 8 are pre-recorded, and we'll start coming out on Monday for the season 2. And the season 2 music is by Michael Lowenstern, so that's pretty. I haven't really announced that yet. Maybe I did, but yeah, it sounds pretty cool. So
yeah, and Sean, Lori just said, is there a direct donation link?
There is actually, yeah, and you can also. This is worth mentioning. If you shop on Amazon, I also have Amazon affiliate links. So whatever you're purchasing, actually, if you go to clarineat.com and then click the support page, and then you click your country, it allows you to enter Amazon, and then whatever you purchase, a small commission goes towards the website. So I also have CDs for sale on there. You can buy Clarinet t-shirts. I meant to bring one down, but I don't have it here. And there is a direct donation box if you'd be so kind that way as well. There's also a service called Patreon, which lets you make like a small monthly contribution. And the idea there that is, let's say if everyone were to pitch in a couple of dollars, then something like that would really be able to take it forward into the future. It's been so much fun making it, but it takes a lot of time. I put over 20, 30 hours of work into every single episode. And but I've been in touch with some really fantastic people, and it's been incredible how the community has responded to it. So I'm really fortunate to be able to do that.
That sounds awesome. And we promised some door prizes. So while people are looking at links there, I have a door prize to give away. This is something that's not available to the general public, although I did offer it to some of the Clarinet Mentors people who already had some special courses. So I know some of you have it already. But I have a new course coming out that's a monthly clarinet repertoire course. It's called Mastering Clarinet Music, and it just has a couple, maybe a concerto that's a standard clarinet piece, some easier etudes, and it's some video lessons on how to do it. And I'm going to give away 2 months free to someone on this call. And so Sean's my cohort on this. He knows how I'm going to do this. So here's the rules. If you're on the call, get your computer, get ready to type in something. You only get to put one comment in the chat box. But here it is. I'm holding up a piece of paper here so you can see I'm not going to change it. Think of a number between 1 and 20 and type it, and whoever gets the number in my hand first wins. And Sean, if you see that number.
Oh, man. I don't know what the number is.
I thought I emailed it to you. Okay, I saw it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that would be Golden Beast had 17 first.
Golden Beast. Okay, so Golden Beast, you were the first one there. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry to get that email.
Okay, no, that's all right. So Golden Beast, what I need you to do, since I don't know you, is send me an email, michelle@clarinetmentors.com, with your email address, and I'll set you up with 2 months of that course and get you registered in it. And thank you so much. That's That's a $58 US value as your prize for being here. And also, Golden Beast, appreciate that you've been putting in some great comments throughout our day today.
So I'd also like to do a little giveaway if that's okay. And first of all, I also want to just say thank you to Michelle for putting all the effort into what she does. I think that it's actually, I've been watching her videos before I even started Clarinet, and I've always really enjoyed them. And before we did this, I was joking that it really saved me the time of having to put up videos because they're already there. There's always such a great wealth of sort of knowledge up there. But yeah, I'd like to do a little giveaway too. I think we'll do the same thing. I'll just put some lines here, slashes. I also picked a number, and it's behind this card. I didn't email it to Michelle. Anyways, what will I be giving away? You'll just get a little card about Clarinet. This is like an info sheet. Then there's my business card, just if you want to contact me or anything like that. There's also a $10 off coupon for anything on the Clarinet store. And I'll throw in a signed copy of my new CD, whoops, it's upside down, called Dream Songs. So I'll send that out to you in this bag right here. All I need to do is put your name and address on the front and send it off. So we'll do the same thing, but everyone's already typing numbers.
That's okay. I see. So I'm going to go from where it says from Sean Perrin to everyone, ... And
yeah. Okay.
Turn your number around.
And no one guessed it yet. Wow.
Okay.
It's between 1 and 1,000. No, I'm just kidding.
We're going to be here for another 4 hours.
Okay. I see where it is. There we go. 14.
Is that Brian Anderson?
So I think so. Yeah, that'd be Brian Anderson. So Brian, if you could just send me an email after this, I'll send you the CD. And sorry, my signature won't be that great right now. I'll have to just sort of scrawl it on there. But, I'm having trouble writing, so my message won't be very long. But I'll maybe put my name or something.
All right.
So thank you so much, everyone. This was really fun.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm switching my view back to seeing everybody who's on this call. And I know we didn't get to everyone's questions. Some of you had emailed questions in advance. And so Sean and I will take all of those questions, and they will come out in an upcoming video that we'll certainly send a note out. And also, when we send out the replay, most of you have registered. We'll send it out to our email list. We'll include some of the links to some of the things we were talking about here, just so you have some resources to follow up. So let's do this. Everybody who's on the call, thank you so much for being here. If you want to do like a big wave at the camera, that'll be where I'm going to end the recorded part. Yay! All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sean. And I'm going to say goodbye.